The arrival of the Criterion warships emerged from hyperspace like silent predators breaking through dark water, their obsidian hulls reflecting nothing but the cold void of space. Commander Vexter stood on the bridge of his flagship, all four of his arms clasped behind his elongated spine as he observed the blue planet rotating slowly before him. Earth, the next conquest in a campaign that had already claimed 73 worlds. His species had perfected the art of subjugation over 3 millennia, and this primitive world would be no different. The Criterions had monitored Earth's broadcasts for decades, learning human languages and studying their divided nations. They saw a species that couldn't even unite their own planet, still dependent on fossil fuels and barely capable of reaching their own moon with regularity. Vexter's tactical advisors had laughed when they reviewed Earth's military capabilities. Nuclear weapons were considered antiques by galactic standards, and the humans didn't even have a unified planetary defense system. Sarah Chun was working the late shift at the Pacific Defense Observatory when her screens lit up with impossible readings. Objects the size of cities had appeared from nowhere, positioned strategically around Earth's orbit. Her hands trembled as she initiated the verification protocols, but there was no mistake. Humanity's first contact with alien life wasn't going to be a peaceful exchange of knowledge. It was going to be an invasion. The emergency channels erupted with activity as observatories worldwide confirmed the sightings. President Marcus Williams was pulled from his bed and rushed to the Situation Room beneath Washington, D.C., where he joined other world leaders via encrypted connection. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth was looking at the same threat, and old rivalries suddenly seemed insignificant. Vexter transmitted his ultimatum in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, and a dozen other languages simultaneously. The message was simple, and had worked on countless worlds before. Surrender within one solar rotation or face complete annihilation. To demonstrate their power, the Criterions vaporized an abandoned space station with a casual energy beam that turned metal into glowing particles within seconds. The display was calculated to inspire terror and submission, but something unexpected happened in those first 24 hours. Instead of panic and chaos, Earth went quiet. Cities that should have been rioting were eerily calm. Military bases that should have been scrambling fighters were strangely still. Vexter and intelligence officers were confused. Every other species had either surrendered immediately or launched desperate, futile attacks. Humans did neither. What the Criterions didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this possibility since the Cold War, not specifically for alien invasion, but for survival in the face of total destruction. Beneath every major city were vast networks of tunnels and bunkers, originally built for nuclear war, but constantly updated and expanded. When the alien ultimatum came, humanity didn't panic. They simply activated Protocol 7, and within hours, millions of people had vanished underground. General Patricia Morrison coordinated the global response from a command center 2 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. She knew humanity couldn't match the aliens in a straight fight, but humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars by being adaptable. If they couldn't win through strength, they would win through cunning. The order went out to all military units. Let them land. Let them think they've won. Then show them what happens when you corner humanity. The Criterion ground forces descended in massive landing craft, expecting to find cowering populations ready for processing. Instead, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. Commander Vexter was disturbed but not worried. His thermal scanners showed life signs beneath the surface, and he ordered his troops to breach the underground networks. That was his first mistake. The tunnel systems weren't just shelters. They were kill zones designed by generations of military engineers. The Criterions, accustomed to fighting on open battlefields or in space, found themselves in narrow passages with their Superior numbers meant nothing. Their energy weapons, designed for long-range combat, were less effective in close quarters. Meanwhile, human forces used projectile weapons that ricocheted off tunnel walls, creating deadly clouds of shrapnel. Lieutenant Marcus Thompson led one of the first successful ambush operations in the New York tunnels. His squad of 30 Marines managed to eliminate an entire Crytherian platoon by collapsing tunnel sections and using the city's old subway system to attack from unexpected angles. The aliens' advanced armor couldn't protect them from tons of falling concrete, and their communication systems were disrupted by the electromagnetic interference from old subway rails that humans had deliberately electrified. The Crytherians had conquered worlds with billions of inhabitants, but they had never fought an enemy that turned their own cities into weapons. In Tokyo, resistance fighters flooded sections of the underground with natural gas from the city's distribution network, creating massive explosions that wiped out entire alien units. In London, defenders used the ancient sewer systems that dated back centuries, moving through passages too small for the larger Crytherian soldiers to follow. Dr. James Park studied the first captured Crytherian technology from his laboratory in Seoul's underground research complex. The alien weapons were marvels of engineering, but they had a critical weakness. They were designed for efficiency and precision, not durability. Human weapons might have been cruder, but they worked in mud, water, and extreme temperatures. The alien equipment failed when exposed to Earth's diverse environments. Their vehicles bogged down in swamps, their aircraft struggled in thunderstorms, and their armor systems overheated in deserts. Commander Vexter watched his initial projections crumble as casualty reports poured in. The conquest that should have taken days was stretching into weeks, and his forces were taking losses that hadn't been seen in centuries. Every Crytherian soldier was worth 100 humans in terms of training and equipment, but the humans seemed willing to sacrifice thousands to kill just one invader. It was economically irrational, militarily wasteful, and completely incomprehensible. To the Crytherian mindset, the psychological impact on the Crytherian forces was even worse than the physical losses. Soldiers who had conquered entire star systems were being killed by primitives using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They began to fear the darkness of the tunnels, the silence of empty cities, and most of all, the unpredictability of human tactics. Some units reported enemies that attacked while laughing. Others described humans who charge into certain death just to deliver a single explosive device. Captain Sofia Rodriguez achieved the first major victory when she led a coordinated attack on a Crytherian supply depot in Mexico City. Using stolen alien vehicles painted with Crytherian markings, her team infiltrated the compound and destroyed tons of equipment and supplies. The explosion was visible from orbit, and it sent a message to both sides. Humans weren't just surviving. They were learning. The Crytherians tried to adapt their tactics, bringing in heavier weapons and attempting to gas the tunnels. But for every countermeasure they deployed, humans found a new way around it. They used the aliens' own technology against them, jury-rigging captured weapons into improvised bombs. They exploited the Crytherians' reliance on centralized command by targeting communication nodes. Most importantly, they never gave the invaders a moment of peace. 3 months into the invasion, Commander Vexter received reports that disturbed him more than any casualty figure. Human forces weren't just defending. They were getting stronger. Resistance cells were sharing information globally, teaching each other what worked and what didn't. Children were being trained to recognize Crytherian weak points. Scientists were reverse engineering captured technology at a rate that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. Earth wasn't just resisting conquest. It was transforming into something the Crytherians had never encountered before. Asterisk. The reversal of the war changed forever when Dr. Elena Vasquez successfully activated the first human-built energy weapon based on captured Criterion technology. It wasn't as refined as the alien version, but it worked, and more importantly, humans could mass-produce it using Earth's industrial infrastructure. Within weeks, resistance cells worldwide were equipped with weapons that could pierce Criterion armor, and the hunters became the hunted. Commander Vexter stood in his orbital command center, watching data streams that made no sense according to 3,000 years of military doctrine. The humans weren't just copying Criterion technology. They were improving it. They added manual overrides to automated systems, built redundancies into critical components, and most disturbingly, they combined it with their own primitive but effective technologies. A human fighter craft might have Criterion shields, Earth-made missiles, and a nuclear self-destruct device all in the same vehicle. The first coordinated global counteroffensive began 6 months after the invasion. General Morrison had spent months building a coalition that included every nation on Earth, from superpowers to tiny island states. The plan was ambitious beyond anything attempted in human history. Instead of trying to defeat the Criterions with overwhelming force, they would use the aliens' own expectations against them. Operation Prometheus launched at dawn on a Tuesday. Though the concept of dawn meant little in the underground cities where most humans now lived. Across 6 continents, human forces emerged from hidden positions simultaneously. But instead of attacking military targets, they struck at Criterion logistics and communication networks. Power stations, supply depots, and transmission towers were destroyed in precisely coordinated strikes that left the alien forces suddenly. Blind and hungry. Captain David Kim led the assault on the Criterion command ship that had landed in Seoul to coordinate ground operations. His team of Korean, Japanese, and Chinese special forces had trained together for months, setting aside centuries of historical animosity to face a common threat. They infiltrated the ship through waste disposal systems, something the Criterions had never bothered to properly defend, because no civilized species would crawl through sewage to launch an attack. The command ship's capture was a turning point that even Vexter couldn't ignore. The humans didn't just take the ship, they used it. Within hours, human hackers were inside Criterion communication networks, spreading false orders and confusion throughout the invasion force. Alien units found themselves firing on each other. Supply ships delivered weapons to resistance cells, and critical intelligence flowed directly to human command centers. The psychological warfare campaign that followed broke the Criterion forces in ways that weapons never could. Humans broadcast the screams of dying Criterion soldiers on their own communication frequencies. They sent fake surrender offers that led alien units into ambushes. Most effectively, they began broadcasting to the Criterion Empire itself, showing images of the supposedly inferior humans defeating the galaxy's most feared military. Lieutenant Ana Silva discovered something in the captured Criterion databases that changed everything. Earth wasn't the first world to resist the Empire, but it was the first to last more than a week. The record showed dozens of species that had tried to fight back, all crushed within days. But those defeats had taught the Criterions that no one could stand against them, making them complacent and predictable. They had been using the same tactics for centuries because they had always worked before. The revelation spread through human forces like wildfire. They weren't just fighting for Earth. They were carrying the hopes of every enslaved species in the galaxy. Messages began arriving through captured Criterion communication systems from resistance groups on other worlds. Species that had been slaves for generations were watching Earth's fight and beginning to believe that freedom was possible. Commander Vexter made a desperate decision to call for reinforcements, but the message that returned chilled him to his core. Rebellions were breaking out across the Empire. Slave species that had been docile for centuries were rising up, inspired by humanity's example. The Empire's forces were stretched thin, trying to maintain control, and no reinforcements were coming. Earth had become a symbol of resistance that was spreading across the galaxy, like a virus. The first human ship to leave Earth's atmosphere, carrying weapons instead of explorers, launched 8 months after the invasion began. It wasn't pretty, combining human engineering with stolen Criterion technology in ways that violated every principle of spacecraft design. But it worked, and more importantly, it carried a message to the galaxy. Humanity was coming. Captain Jennifer Wright commanded this ugly hybrid vessel as it engaged Criterion patrol ships near Mars. The aliens expected the humans to fight like they did, maintaining formation and following predictable patterns. Instead, Wright flew her ship like she was still in Earth's atmosphere, making turns that should have torn the vessel apart. Her gunners used tactics learned in video games, leading targets in ways that Criterion targeting computers couldn't predict. The Battle of Mars lasted 3 days and ended with the complete destruction of the Criterion fleet stationed there. But more importantly, it proved that humans could fight in space. Within months, Earth's factories were producing dozens of hybrid warships, each one unique and unpredictable. They didn't look like proper warships, but they fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Park made another crucial discovery when examining Criterion biological samples. The aliens were physically superior to humans in almost every way, stronger, faster, with better natural armor. But they had evolved on a planet with stable conditions and had used technology to maintain those conditions wherever they went. Humans, who had evolved on a world of constant change and danger, could adapt to environments that would kill Criterions in hours. The liberation of Alpha Centauri B marked the beginning of the end for the Criterion Empire. Human forces didn't just defeat the occupation. They freed the Zelani, a species that had been enslaved for 800 years. The Zelani wept when they saw humans, not because they were being liberated, but because they had thought they were alone in the universe. The idea that anyone could resist the Criterions had been beaten out of them generations ago. Commander Vexter received his final orders from the Empire's capital as human and allied forces approached Earth's solar system. He was to destroy Earth completely, even if it meant sacrificing his entire fleet. The Empire hoped that humanity's destruction would end the rebellions spreading across the galaxy. But when he gave the order, something unprecedented happened. His own officers refused. They had spent a year fighting humans and had developed something their species had never experienced before: respect for their enemy. The surrender ceremony took place in the ruins of New York City, with Commander Vexter formally transferring his sword to General Morrison. But Morrison did something that shocked everyone present. She handed it back, saying that Earth didn't want to conquer anyone. They wanted something far more dangerous to the old order. They wanted every species to be free. The Criterion Empire collapsed within 2 years of their failed invasion of Earth, not from military defeat, but from the idea that humanity had planted that no species had the right to rule over another. The galaxy entered a new era, one where diversity and adaptability were valued over conformity and control. The Criterions had come to conquer a primitive world and add it to their collection. Instead, they had awakened a species that would reshape the galaxy's entire future. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't advanced technology or military might. It was something far more powerful: the belief that anyone could fight for their freedom and win. The Empire had ruled for 3,000 years through fear and the certainty of their superiority. Humans destroyed that certainty in less than 2 years, not through strength, but through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They had turned their supposed weakness into strength, their chaos into strategy, and their divided world into a united force that changed the course of galactic history. Asterisk, the age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun. And it had started, with a species from a small blue planet that everyone had dismissed as primitive and weak. The Critherians had thought Earth would fall easily. Instead, humanity shattered their era and built something new from its ruins. Asterisk.